My son whispered to my daughter, "Soon this house and everything else will be ours." She smirked. I was standing behind the wall and heard every word. The next day, I quietly transferred all my property. When they found out, "Good day, dear listeners. It's Clara again. I'm glad you're here with me. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end and let me know which city you're listening from. That way, I can see how far my story has traveled." I used to think I was blessed. A comfortable house in suburban Pennsylvania, 2 grown children who visited regularly, and enough savings to live my remaining years in peace. My husband Robert had passed 5 years ago, leaving me the house, his life insurance, and a modest investment portfolio. I wasn't wealthy, but I was secure. That's what I believed anyway. My son Michael was 42, a real estate agent with a charming smile and expensive tastes. My daughter Jennifer was 39, working in marketing, always dressed like she earned twice what she actually did. They'd both struggled financially over the years. Michael through 2 divorces, Jennifer through poor investments and credit card debt. I'd helped them when I could. What mother wouldn't? But something had shifted in recent months. Their visits became more frequent, yet somehow less warm. Michael would walk through my house, commenting on property values in the neighborhood. "This area's really appreciated, Mom. Houses like yours are selling for $500,000 now." Jennifer would finger my jewelry, asking where I'd gotten each piece, whether they were real or costume. Were these innocent observations, or was I reading too much into them? The questions started subtly. Did I have a will? Had I updated it recently? What were my plans for when the time came? They assured me these were responsible questions, things any caring children would ask. I told myself they were right. I told myself I was being paranoid. Then came that Tuesday evening in October. Michael and Jennifer had come for dinner. Nothing unusual about that. I'd made pot roast, Robert's favorite recipe that I still prepared from muscle memory. We ate. We talked about their lives, their jobs, their complaints about money. After dinner, I excused myself to the kitchen to prepare coffee. That's when I heard it. I was standing at the counter, measuring grounds into the filter, when Jennifer's voice drifted from the living room. The house was old. Sounds carried through the walls in strange ways. She must have thought I couldn't hear. "How much longer do you think?" Jennifer asked. "She's 73 and healthy as a horse," Michael replied. "Could be years. But it doesn't matter. We need to start positioning ourselves now." "What do you mean?" "I mean, we need to be indispensable. Make her dependent on us. Then when it's time for assisted living or whatever, we'll have power of attorney, access to everything." My hand froze. The coffee scoop trembled, spilling grounds across the counter. Jennifer laughed. A cold sound I'd never heard from her before. "You really think she'll just hand everything over? She already trusts us completely. She's lonely, getting older. People like that become malleable. We just need to be patient and strategic." "And if she doesn't cooperate?" There was a pause. Then Michael's voice, lower, harder. "There are ways. She's getting forgetful. At least that's what we'll say. Diminished capacity. We document everything, build a case if we need to." "Michael, that's practical, Jen. This house alone is worth $500,000. Plus her investments, the life insurance money she hasn't touched, Dad's pension benefits. We're talking about $700,000 minimum, maybe more. You want to just walk away from that?" Another pause. Then Jennifer, quieter now. "Soon this house and everything else will be ours." She laughed again. Michael joined her. I stood there in my kitchen, the kitchen where I'd fed them thousands of meals, where I'd packed their school lunches and baked their birthday cakes, and I felt something crack inside my chest. Not my heart breaking. That would come later. This was different. This was the sound of my illusions shattering. How long had they seen me this way? As an obstacle? An asset to be liquidated? I forced myself to breathe slowly, quietly. The coffee maker gurgled, filling the silence. I arranged cups on a tray with steady hands, though my mind was racing. When I walked back into the living room, they were sitting there with innocent smiles, and I smiled back. "Coffee's ready," I said brightly. We talked for another hour. About nothing. About everything. I played the role they expected, the pleasant, slightly confused old woman, and all the while, I was thinking. They wanted my house, my life's work, my security. We'd see about that. That night after they left, I sat alone in Robert's old study. The room still smelled faintly of his pipe tobacco, though I'd stopped anyone from smoking in the house years ago. Some scents linger, like memories, like betrayals. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Jennifer's laugh, Michael's calculated tone. Malleable. That's what he'd called me. Diminished capacity. They were already building their narrative, weren't they? The sad story of an elderly woman losing her grip on reality, fortunate to have such devoted children to manage her affairs. How many other families had this happened to? I'd read articles, seen news stories about elder abuse, financial exploitation. I'd always thought those victims were different, more isolated, more vulnerable, more foolish. Was I foolish? I opened Robert's old filing cabinet and pulled out our documents. The house deed, still in both our names though he'd been gone 5 years. Our will, drafted 20 years ago when the kids were young and struggling, leaving everything split equally between them. Bank statements showing my savings accounts, investment portfolios, the life insurance payout I'd barely touched because I couldn't bear to spend the money that came from losing him. Michael had been right about one thing. The total was substantial. Just over $700,000 in assets. My hands shook as I held the papers. This was my security, my independence. The cushion that let me live without burdening anyone, without becoming the very thing they were trying to make me, dependent, helpless, controllable. I thought about calling them, confronting them directly. But what would I say? "I overheard you plotting against me." They'd deny it, gaslight me, tell me I'd misunderstood. They'd practiced manipulation their entire lives. I'd watched them charm their way out of consequences since childhood. Michael had talked his way out of 2 failed marriages. Jennifer had a gift for rewriting history to suit her needs, number. Confrontation would only warn them, make them more careful. I needed to be smarter than that. Around 3 a.m, sitting at Robert's desk with cold coffee and decades of paperwork spread before me, I made my decision. I wouldn't just protect myself. I would take away their power completely. If they wanted to treat me like an asset to be acquired, I'd remove that asset from the board entirely. But I had to be careful, strategic, use their own assumptions against them. They thought I was lonely and malleable? I'd play that role perfectly. They thought I was getting forgetful. I'd give them nothing to contradict that. Meanwhile, I'd dismantle everything they were counting on, piece by piece, and they wouldn't know until it was too late. The first step was research. I spent the next morning on my laptop, something else they'd probably be surprised I could use competently, looking up estate planning attorneys, trust options, asset protection strategies. I'd always left the complicated financial decisions to Robert, but that didn't mean I was incapable, just unpracticed. I made a list in a notebook I kept hidden in my bedroom. Find a lawyer they don't know. Understand my options for protecting assets. Document their behavior. Move carefully. They can't suspect anything. By noon, I'd identified 3 estate planning attorneys in neighboring counties, far enough that Michael and Jennifer wouldn't accidentally hear about my visits through local connections. I called the first one, a woman named Patricia Hendricks, whose website emphasized elder law and asset protection. "I need to make some changes to my estate plan," I told her receptionist. "But I'd prefer discretion. Family matters." The receptionist's voice was understanding. "We handle many sensitive situations, ma'am. Mrs. Hendricks has an opening Thursday at 2 o'clock. "Perfect." I wrote it down. "And, is there a back entrance to your office? I'd rather not be seen in the waiting room." A slight pause. "There is. I'll make a note for Mrs. Hendricks. She'll meet you privately. This was really happening. I was actively deceiving my own children, preparing to cut them out of my life in the most fundamental way possible. Shouldn't I feel guilty? Shouldn't maternal love compel me to give them another chance? But they'd already had their chances. Every time I'd helped with their rent, their car payments, their credit card debts. Every time I'd babysat their children, listened to their problems, supported their dreams. And this was how they saw me, as an obstacle between them and money. I felt something harden in my chest, cold and solid. They wanted to play games with my life? Fine. But they were playing against a woman who'd survived 73 years, buried a husband, raised 2 ungrateful children, and still had fight left in her. Let's see who was really diminished here. Patricia Hendricks was in her mid-50s, with sharp eyes and a firm handshake. Her office smelled like leather and lemon polish, professional, serious. She gestured to a chair across from her mahogany desk. "Tell me what brings you here, Mrs. Morrison," she said. I'd practiced this conversation in my head, but actually saying the words felt like swallowing glass. My children are planning to take advantage of me, to claim I'm mentally incompetent and take control of my assets. I expected skepticism. Instead, she nodded and pulled out a legal pad. Unfortunately, I see this often. Tell me everything. I recounted the overheard conversation, the pattern of their recent behavior, my concerns about their intentions. As I spoke, Patricia took notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions. Her expression remained neutral, professional. "Do you have any documentation?" she asked. "Emails, texts, anything in writing?" "Not yet, but I'm working on it." She leaned back in her chair. "Here's the reality, Mrs. Morrison. What you've described is morally reprehensible, but proving elder abuse or undue influence requires evidence. However, we don't need to prove anything to protect you. We just need to restructure your assets in a way that removes them from their reach entirely." How? Several options. We can establish an irrevocable trust, transfer property ownership, update beneficiaries, create legal safeguards against power of attorney challenges. The key is doing it while you're demonstrably competent, which you clearly are. Over the next hour, we discussed strategies. Patricia recommended a comprehensive approach: transferring my house into a qualified personal residence trust, moving liquid assets into an irrevocable trust with an independent trustee, updating my will to include specific disinheritance language, and establishing a healthcare directive that explicitly excluded Michael and Jennifer from medical decision-making. "This is aggressive," she warned. "Once it's done, they can't undo it." "Are you certain?" I thought about Jennifer's cold laugh, Michael's casual cruelty. "Absolutely certain." "Then let's begin. I'll need documentation of all your assets, account numbers, titles, deeds. We'll move quickly, but carefully. Can you gather these without arousing suspicion?" "I'll manage." We scheduled another meeting for the following week. I left through the back entrance, feeling both terrified and exhilarated. This was really happening. But controlling my children wasn't going to be easy. That weekend, Jennifer stopped by unexpectedly, something that had become increasingly common. I was in the garden, pulling weeds, when she appeared at the gate. "Mom!" "I tried calling. Didn't you hear your phone?" I wiped dirt from my hands. "Oh, I must have left it inside. What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. I just wanted to see you." She walked closer, studying my face. "You seem distracted lately. Are you feeling okay?" There it was, the groundwork, establishing that I was distracted, forgetful, building their case. "I'm fine, dear. Just thinking about your father. You know how it is." Her expression softened into practiced sympathy. "Of course. That's actually why I came by. Michael and I have been talking, and we think you shouldn't be alone so much. We were thinking maybe we could hire someone to help around the house. Someone to keep you company? Someone to monitor me," she meant. Someone to report back on my activities, my competence, my behavior. That's sweet but unnecessary. I manage just fine. But Mom, you're not getting any younger. What if you fell? What if something happened and no one knew? She paused. We worry about you. I let her convince me to think about it, knowing full well I'd never agree. After she left, I noticed she'd walked through several rooms of my house, casually opening drawers, examining papers on my desk. Looking for something? Or just cataloging my belongings? I needed proof of their intentions, something concrete. That evening, I did something I'd never imagined doing. I went to an electronics store and bought a small recording device, the kind designed to look like a pen. The young clerk showed me how to activate it, how to download files to my computer. Is this for lectures or something? He asked cheerfully. Something like that, I replied. The next time Michael visited, 3 days later, I had the pen in my cardigan pocket, recording turned on. We sat in the living room, drinking tea, and I played my role perfectly. Slightly confused, asking him to repeat things, mentioning that I couldn't remember where I'd put my glasses. He took the bait beautifully. Mom, this is exactly what I've been concerned about, he said, leaning forward with false concern. These memory issues. Have you talked to your doctor? I'm just tired, dear. It could be more than that. Early dementia, maybe. We should get you tested. He paused. And maybe it's time to talk about practical matters, like power of attorney. Just in case something happens, Jennifer and I could handle things for you. Take the burden off your shoulders. There it was, recorded, documented, undeniable. Let me think about it, I said softly. After he left, I listened to the recording 3 times. His voice, so caring on the surface, so calculating underneath. I saved the file with a timestamp, backed it up to cloud storage, and emailed a copy to Patricia Hendricks. Her response came within an hour. This changes everything. Come in tomorrow. We're moving forward immediately. Patricia worked fast. Within a week, we'd transferred the house into the QPRT, moved my liquid assets into an irrevocable trust managed by a professional trustee from a firm in Philadelphia, and drafted a new will that explicitly stated, I am intentionally making no provision for my children, Michael Morrison and Jennifer Morrison Blake, as they have demonstrated conduct toward me that I find unconscionable. Legal language for heartbreak. The documents were signed, notarized, filed. My assets were now beyond their reach, untouchable, protected, mine to control through carefully structured legal instruments, but impossible for them to claim, even if they somehow convinced a court I was incompetent. You're protected, Patricia assured me. They could spend $100,000 on lawyers and get nowhere. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt hollow. I'd just legally severed my children from my life's work, from any inheritance, from the family legacy Robert and I had built together. But they'd forced this. I had to remember that. I didn't tell them, of course. I continued playing the slightly confused elderly mother, accepting their increasingly frequent visits, their pointed questions about my finances, their suggestions about getting my affairs in order. But somehow, they found out. I still don't know how. Maybe someone at the county recorder's office mentioned the property transfer. Maybe they'd been monitoring my accounts more closely than I realized. However it happened, Michael appeared at my door on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after I'd signed the documents, and the mask was completely gone. What the hell did you do? He pushed past me into the house, his face flushed with rage. Jennifer was right behind him. Mom, we need to talk. Now. My heart hammered, but I kept my voice steady. About what? Don't play stupid, Michael shouted. The house. It's not in your name anymore. And your bank accounts, the investment accounts, where's the money, Mom? I restructured my estate. It's my money, Michael. Your money? After everything we've done for you? Jennifer's voice was shrill. We've taken care of you, visited you, worried about you. Worried about my assets, you mean? The room went silent. Michael's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? I pulled out my phone, opened the recording app, and played it. Michael's voice filled the room. We need to make her dependent on us. Diminished capacity. 700,000 minimum. Jennifer's face went white. Michael stared at the phone like it was a weapon. You recorded us? He whispered. You plotted against me, I replied. Did you think I'd just let you take everything I worked for? Michael's expression shifted from shock to cold calculation. You're going to undo this, all of it. Transfer everything back, or what? Or we'll fight this. We'll get doctors to testify that you're not competent, that you were manipulated by some lawyer who took advantage of a confused old woman. We'll contest everything in court, tie it up for years. You'll spend your last years fighting legal battles, Mom. Is that what you want? My hands trembled, but I didn't back down. I have documentation of my competency, medical records, testimony from my attorney. You'll lose. You're willing to destroy your relationship with your children over money? Jennifer tried a different approach, tears welling in her eyes. Mom, we're your family. You stopped being my family when you started seeing me as an inheritance. Michael stepped closer, his voice dropping to something dangerous. You'll regret this. We can make your life very difficult, very lonely. No more grandchildren visiting. No more family holidays. You'll die alone in this house. The threat hung in the air. Part of me wanted to crumble, to take it all back, to have my children love me again, even if that love was a lie. But I'd come too far. Get out, I said quietly. Mom, get out! They left, slamming the door so hard a picture frame fell from the wall and shattered. I stood there, shaking, and then I collapsed into Robert's armchair and sobbed for an hour. After the storm passed, I called Patricia. They know. They threatened me. Document everything. If they contact you again with threats, we may need a restraining order. In the meantime, take care of yourself. Do you have friends? Support? I'll manage. But she was right. I needed time to recover from that confrontation. The next few days, I unplugged my phone, ignored the doorbell, and simply existed. I read books, tended my garden, let myself grieve the family I'd thought I had. By Friday, I felt stronger. Sadder, but stronger. The battle wasn't over. But I'd survived the first real assault. The emails started arriving a week later, not from Michael or Jennifer directly. They were too smart for that. Instead, their children reached out. My grandchildren. Emma, Michael's 17-year-old daughter, sent the first message. Grandma, Dad says you're sick and won't let us help. I miss you. Please call me. Then Christopher, Jennifer's 15-year-old son. Grandma, why won't you talk to Mom? She's really upset. Did we do something wrong? Using the grandchildren. Of course they would. I stared at those messages for a long time. Emma and Christopher were innocent in this. They had no idea what their parents were doing. But responding would open a door I deliberately closed. My silence was protection, not cruelty. I didn't reply. 2 days later, a flower delivery arrived. 24 roses with a card. Mom, we love you. We're sorry for any misunderstanding. Can we talk? Please? M and J? Misunderstanding. As if I'd somehow misinterpreted their plan to strip me of my autonomy and assets. The flowers went in the trash. Then came the photo. An old picture of all of us together. Robert still alive, the kids young and smiling, everyone happy. It arrived in my mailbox in an envelope with no return address. On the back, someone had written, "Remember when we were a family?" That one hurt. I won't pretend it didn't. I sat at my kitchen table, holding that photograph, and felt the weight of what I'd lost. Not the children I had now, the greedy, manipulative strangers, but the children I'd thought I had. The illusion of family. How many times could a heart break over the same loss? I was spiraling into dangerous territory, self-pity, second-guessing, when the doorbell rang. I almost didn't answer, assuming it was another manipulation attempt. but something made me look through the peephole. It wasn't Michael or Jennifer. It was Helen Grady, my neighbor from 3 houses down. I opened the door cautiously. "Helen? I know we've never been particularly close," she said quickly, "but I've noticed activity at your house lately. Shouting, your son leaving angry. And I wanted to check if you're all right." Something in her directness steadied me. "Would you like to come in?" Over tea, I told her everything, not the financial details, I wasn't foolish, but the broad strokes. My children's betrayal, their attempts at manipulation, my decision to protect myself. Helen listened without interrupting. When I finished, she nodded slowly. "My sister went through something similar. Her daughter tried to have her declared incompetent to access her pension. It's more common than you'd think." "What happened?" "My sister fought back, just like you're doing. It was hard, lonely. But she had a support group, other seniors dealing with family financial abuse. They met weekly, shared resources, kept each other strong." She paused. "Would you be interested in something like that?" Yes. Actually, yes. Helen made a call right there at my kitchen table. Within 15 minutes, I'd been invited to a meeting the following Tuesday at the community center. That meeting changed everything. There were 8 of us, seniors ranging from 65 to 83, all dealing with some form of family exploitation. Some had children trying to access their money. Others faced pressure to sign over properties, change wills, or hand over control of their finances. A woman named Dorothy, 79 with snow-white hair, ran the group. "We're not here to trash our families," she explained. "We're here to acknowledge reality and support each other in protecting ourselves. What you share here stays here. We don't judge. We just listen." When my turn came, I shared my story. The words came easier this time, less painful. When I finished, heads nodded around the circle. "You did the right thing," Dorothy said firmly. "Protecting yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary." A man named Arthur, who'd been fighting his son's attempt to gain power of attorney, added, "They count on our guilt, on us prioritizing their feelings over our safety. Don't let them win that way." For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel alone. I started attending the meetings regularly. Between sessions, group members would check on each other via text or calls. When I felt weak, when I considered reaching out to Michael and Jennifer, someone from the group would remind me why I'd made these choices. Helen became an unexpected ally. She'd watch my house when I was out, subtly monitoring for any unwanted visitors. "I'm retired," she said with a shrug. "I've got time, and I like you. Plus, your son's car is obnoxiously loud. I'll hear him coming." With this support network, my cold resolve hardened into something unshakable. I wasn't just protecting myself anymore. I was standing firm on principle. Michael and Jennifer had expected me to crumble under pressure, to crave family connection so desperately that I'd surrender. They'd miscalculated badly. I was done being manipulated, done feeling guilty, done allowing them to weaponize my love against me. Let them send flowers, photos, tearful messages from grandchildren. Let them try every trick in their arsenal. I wasn't bending, not anymore. They came on a Sunday afternoon in early December, just as I was decorating for Christmas. Not that I was particularly festive this year, but old habits die hard. I was hanging a wreath when I saw both their cars pull into my driveway. My stomach tightened. Helen was visiting her daughter in Baltimore for the weekend, no backup. I briefly considered not answering, but they'd just keep coming back. I opened the door before they could knock. Michael smiled, his salesman's smile, the one that had charmed countless clients. "Mom, we need to talk. Calmly, reasonably. Can we come in?" Jennifer stood beside him, her expression carefully neutral. "Please, Mom. We've had time to think. We want to make things right." Every instinct screamed at me to refuse. But I'd also learned from Dorothy's group. Sometimes you need to face manipulation head-on, to recognize it clearly, to strengthen your resolve by seeing exactly who you're dealing with. Fine, living room. We sat in the same arrangement as before, them on the couch, me in Robert's chair. The irony wasn't lost on me. This chair had become my fortress. Michael started, his tone carefully modulated. Mom, we've been thinking about everything that's happened, and we realize we could have communicated better. Maybe some things we said came across wrong. Came across wrong? I kept my voice even. You planned to have me declared incompetent to steal my assets. That's not, Jennifer began, then stopped. Reset. We were concerned about your well-being. Maybe we expressed it badly. I recorded your conversation, Jennifer. There's no expressing it badly. You were calculating how to take everything I have. Michael's smile tightened slightly. That recording was taken without our knowledge. In Pennsylvania, that's illegal. We could press charges. Ah, there it was. The threat wrapped in the reconciliation attempt. Feel free, I said calmly. My lawyer has already confirmed that I was recording conversations in my own home about threats to my well-being. Pennsylvania's wiretapping law has exceptions for that. A flash of frustration crossed Michael's face before he smoothed it away. Let's not talk about lawyers and legalities. We're family. We should be able to work this out. Then work it out. Say what you came to say. Jennifer leaned forward, her eyes glistening with practiced tears. Mom, you've locked us out of your life. Changed everything without even talking to us. Don't you see how that feels? We're your children. We deserve to be part of these decisions. Why? So you can override them? So we can help you make good choices. Michael's voice rose slightly before he controlled it. Mom, you're 73. You hired some lawyer we don't know, restructured everything in ways we don't understand. How do we know she didn't take advantage of you? How do we know you're making sound decisions? There it was. The new strategy. Not admitting their own intentions, but questioning my competence and Patricia's integrity. Patricia Hendricks is a respected estate planning attorney with 30 years of experience. I chose her specifically because she doesn't know you and can't be influenced by you. Influenced by us? Jennifer's voice turned sharp. We're trying to protect you. From what? From keeping control of my own life? Michael stood, began pacing. You're being paranoid. You've isolated yourself, made rash decisions, cut off your own family. Mom, doesn't that sound like someone who's not thinking clearly? I understood the play. They were building a narrative. The confused old woman, manipulated by an opportunistic lawyer, acting erratically. If I got angry, if I lost control, it would support their story. I remained perfectly calm. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years. Then prove it, Michael said. Undo what you've done. If you're really competent, if you really made these decisions freely, you can unmake them just as easily. Sit down with us and our attorney, review everything openly. If it all makes sense, we'll accept it. But you owe us that much. The reasonableness of it was the trap. They wanted me in a room with their lawyer, questioning every decision, creating doubt, building their case. No. Jennifer stood too. Just like that? You won't even consider. I said no. I don't owe you access to my finances. I don't owe you explanations. I don't owe you anything. The masks dropped. You selfish bitch, Michael hissed. After everything we've done for you, what? What have you done? Besides visit when you wanted something. Jennifer's face contorted. We took care of you after Dad died. We called you, visited you, made sure you weren't alone. You checked to make sure I hadn't spent your inheritance, you mean? You're not leaving us anything? Jennifer's voice broke. Real emotion, finally, raw and ugly. Nothing? After we're your children? You made yourselves strangers. That was your choice. Michael's hands clenched into fists. For a moment, I thought he might actually hit me. Instead, he grabbed a framed photo from the side table, our last family picture, everyone smiling, and hurled it against the wall. Glass shattered across the hardwood floor. You'll regret this, he said, his voice shaking. We'll make sure of it. You want to die alone? Fine. You'll never see your grandchildren again. Never. We'll tell them you're crazy, that you hate them. Get out of my house. We're not done. Get out or I'm calling the police. They left, Jennifer sobbing, Michael radiating fury. I locked the door behind them and stood there, shaking. The broken picture frame lay on the floor, our happy family scattered in shards of glass. I was terrified, truly terrified, of their rage, of their resources, of what they might do next. But underneath the fear was something harder, colder. They'd shown me exactly who they were. No more pretense, no more masks. And in doing so, they'd eliminated any last shred of doubt. I was right to protect myself, and I wasn't backing down. The letter arrived via certified mail 2 weeks before Christmas. A petition for guardianship filed by Michael and Jennifer Morrison, claiming I was suffering from dementia and unable to manage my own affairs, requesting the court appoint them as my legal guardians with full control over my person and property. They'd actually done it, taken me to court. Patricia called me immediately. Don't panic. We expected this might happen. We're prepared. Prepared for what? They're asking a judge to declare me incompetent. And we're going to prove you're completely competent. I've already requested an immediate hearing and filed our response. We'll also submit the recording and documentation of their financial exploitation attempt. Mrs. Morrison, this is actually good news. How is this good news? Because now they have to prove their case in court, on the record, under oath. And they can't. The hearing was scheduled for January 15th, the longest month of my life. Michael and Jennifer hired an attorney, an expensive one from Philadelphia. They also scheduled a psychiatric evaluation by their chosen doctor, which I refused. Patricia filed to have a neutral, court-appointed psychiatrist evaluate me instead. Dr. Raymond Chen spent 4 hours with me on a cold January morning. He asked hundreds of questions, had me complete cognitive tests, reviewed my medical history, interviewed my physician. When he finished, he looked at me with something like admiration. Mrs. Morrison, you're sharper than most 40-year-olds I evaluate. Whatever your children are claiming, it's nonsense. The hearing was held in a small courtroom that smelled like old wood and anxiety. Michael and Jennifer sat with their lawyer, a slick man in an expensive suit who projected confidence. I sat with Patricia, wearing my best dress and pearls, every inch the competent, dignified, elderly woman I was. Judge Margaret Waterston presided, a woman in her early 60s with gray hair and a reputation for not tolerating nonsense. Michael and Jennifer's attorney went first, painting a picture of a declining elderly woman making erratic decisions under the influence of an unscrupulous attorney. The respondent transferred significant assets into irrevocable trusts, effectively making herself unable to access her own money. This demonstrates impaired judgment. Or careful estate planning, Patricia countered, which many competent people engage in. The attorney called Michael to testify. Under oath, he described my forgetfulness, my confusion, my sudden personality changes. Can you give specific examples? Judge Waterston asked. She couldn't find her glasses. She asked me to repeat things. She seemed disoriented. I ask people to repeat things regularly, the judge said dryly. Continue. Jennifer testified next, crying through her description of a mother who'd turned against her own children without reason. Then Patricia called her witnesses. First, Dr. Chen. He presented his evaluation in clear, clinical terms. Mrs. Morrison demonstrates excellent cognitive function, clear memory, logical reasoning, and full capacity for financial decision-making. She shows no signs of dementia or any condition that would impair her judgment. Next came my physician, Dr. Sarah Patel, who'd treated me for 15 years. Mrs. Morrison is in excellent health for her age, sharp, articulate, fully competent. I'd testify to that under any circumstances. Then Patricia played the recording. The courtroom went silent as Michael's voice filled the space. Make her dependent on us. Diminished capacity. $700,000. Minimum. Jennifer's face went white. Michael stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. Your Honor, Patricia said quietly, this is not a concerned family worried about an ailing mother. This is financial exploitation. These petitioners plan to manipulate their mother into dependency to access her assets. When she protected herself legally, exactly what any competent person would do, they filed this petition as retaliation. That recording was taken illegally, their attorney started. In her own home regarding threats to her well-being, Patricia cut in. Completely legal under Pennsylvania law. Judge Waterston looked at Michael and Jennifer with open disgust. Counselor, do your clients wish to withdraw their petition? Their attorney whispered with them frantically. Michael's face was red, Jennifer was crying. No, Your Honor, we maintain. Then I'll rule from the bench. Judge Waterston's voice could have cut glass. Petition denied. Mrs. Morrison is clearly and obviously competent. Furthermore, I'm formally noting in the record that this petition appears to be retaliatory and potentially frivolous. Mr. Morrison, Miss Morrison Blake, I suggest very strongly that you discontinue any attempts to control or access your mother's assets. She has every right to distribute her property as she sees fit, and these tactics are both legally baseless and morally reprehensible. She banged her gavel. We're adjourned. Michael and Jennifer stood frozen. Their expensive attorney gathered his papers quickly, avoiding eye contact. I walked out of that courtroom with my head high, Patricia beside me. Behind us, I heard Jennifer's voice, broken. Michael, what do we do now? I didn't look back. Outside, Patricia squeezed my shoulder. You won. Completely. I had won. The court had validated everything. My competence, my decisions, my right to protect myself. But I didn't feel victorious. I felt exhausted and infinitely sad. I'd defeated my own children in court. What kind of victory was that? The court's decision was final, but the consequences rippled outward in ways Michael and Jennifer hadn't anticipated. Within a week, their lawsuit became local news. Local siblings attempt guardianship fraud against competent mother, read the headline in the county paper. A reporter had been in the courtroom, drawn by the unusual nature of the case. The article included excerpts from the recording, Dr. Chen's testimony, and Judge Waterston's scathing remarks. It quoted Patricia. This case represents a troubling trend of adult children attempting to exploit their aging parents financially. I didn't seek publicity, but I didn't hide from it either. When a local television station called requesting an interview, I agreed. Let the world see what my children had done. Let other families recognize the warning signs. The segment aired during the evening news. I sat in my living room, composed and dignified, explaining how I'd discovered my children's plot and protected myself. The interviewer asked if I'd consider reconciliation. Reconciliation requires remorse, I said calmly. They're not sorry for what they tried to do. They're sorry they got caught. The response was overwhelming. My phone rang for days with messages from strangers thanking me for speaking out, from other seniors sharing similar stories, from advocacy groups requesting permission to use my case as an educational example. Michael's real estate license came under review by the state board after several of his former clients read the article and filed complaints, claiming he'd shown similar predatory behavior in his business dealings. Apparently, I wasn't the only person he'd tried to manipulate. The board discovered a pattern, pressuring elderly clients to sell properties below market value, steering them toward deals that benefited him personally, exploiting their trust for commission. His license was permanently revoked within 60 days. Jennifer lost 2 major clients at her marketing firm when partners at those companies decided they couldn't trust someone who'd attempted to defraud her own mother. Then 3 more clients followed. Her employer, facing their own reputation concerns, quietly asked for her resignation. Professional reputation, once destroyed, is difficult to rebuild. But I didn't stop there. With Patricia's help, I took one more step, the step that made my victory permanent and absolute. I established a charitable foundation with the bulk of my estate. The Robert Morrison Foundation for Elder Rights would provide legal assistance to seniors facing financial exploitation by family members. Upon my death, nearly everything I owned would fund this work. Legal fees, counseling services, educational programs, support groups. The irony was perfect. The money Michael and Jennifer had coveted would instead help people protect themselves from children exactly like them. I kept enough in the trust to support myself comfortably for the rest of my life, plus a small amount designated for my grandchildren's education, payable directly to universities, never through their parents. Emma and Christopher aren't responsible for their parents' behavior, I told Patricia. They'll have a chance at college, but Michael and Jennifer will never touch that money. Patricia drew up the documents with particular satisfaction. Everything was legal, ironclad, and beyond challenge. She'd seen too many cases like mine end in compromise and continued exploitation. This time, justice would be complete. When Michael and Jennifer learned about the foundation, I made sure they received copies of all documents via certified mail. Jennifer called me within an hour. "How could you?" she sobbed into the phone. "That money is ours. We're your children. You're giving away our inheritance to strangers." To people who need protection from their own children, yes. We were going to apologize. We were going to make things right. After you lost in court, after you were publicly exposed, after you had no other options. That's not remorse, Jennifer. That's calculation. "Please, Mom, please. We're desperate. We have bills, debts. Michael's losing everything. I might lose my house. Can't you at least—" No. Just no, after everything, after we're your children? You stopped being my children when you started being my predators. Actions have consequences, Jennifer. You taught me that when you raised your own kids. Remember? You were always so strict about consequences. She hung up sobbing. I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. Michael tried a different approach. He appeared at my door one evening with Emma, using his daughter as a shield. I saw the calculation immediately. The same manipulation, just redirected. "Grandma, please," Emma begged, tears streaming down her face. "Dad says we might lose our house. Can't you help us? Just this once?" I looked at this young girl, innocent, manipulated by her father, just as he'd tried to manipulate me. My heart broke for her, but not enough to bend. "Emma, sweetheart, your father made choices that have consequences. I've set up a fund for your college education. It will be there when you need it. But I can't give your father money to mismanage. That wouldn't help him. It would just enable him." "But Grandma—" "Emma, get in the car," Michael ordered sharply. He turned to me, and all pretense of civility evaporated. His expression was pure venom. "You're going to regret this. When you're old and sick and dying alone, when there's no one to take care of you." "I'm already old, Michael. And I'd rather die alone with my dignity than live one more day at the mercy of vultures circling my assets." "You're a bitter, selfish old woman. And you're a failure who tried to steal from his own mother. A failure who used his own daughter as a manipulation tool just now. We're both stuck with who we are, but at least I can look at myself in the mirror." His face went red. For a moment, I thought he might actually strike me. Instead, he grabbed Emma's arm roughly and dragged her to his car, speeding away with tires squealing. I watched them go and felt relief. Pure, clean relief. The final piece came 2 weeks later when Helen mentioned that Michael and Jennifer had both put their homes up for sale. "Downsizing?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Desperate, more like. Word is they're both leveraged to the hilt. The lawsuit cost them a fortune. Their lawyer alone was $30,000. The lost income, their destroyed reputations, the debts they've been hiding." Helen shrugged. "They bet everything on controlling your money. Now they're paying the price." I should have felt guilty. Any normal mother would have, wouldn't she? But I felt nothing but vindication. They'd tried to destroy me, and instead they'd destroyed themselves. They'd wielded weapons that backfired spectacularly. I'd won completely, absolutely, without compromise or mercy. My assets were protected. My autonomy was secured. My legacy would help others. And Michael and Jennifer? They had nothing but the consequences of their choices and the public shame of their exposure. Sometimes justice is cold and absolute. Sometimes that's exactly what it should be. 6 months after the trial, I barely recognized my own life, and I meant that in the best possible way. The house felt different now, lighter, somehow. I'd redecorated Robert's study, finally moving past the shrine I'd maintained for 5 years. The room became my office for foundation work, filled with sunlight and plants and purpose. The Robert Morrison Foundation for Elder Rights officially launched in March with a small ceremony at the community center. Dorothy and the entire support group attended. Helen brought a cake. Patricia served as the foundation's legal advisor pro bono. "Your father would be proud," I said to the photograph of Robert I'd placed on my new desk. And I believed it. He'd always hated injustice. We'd already helped 4 families in our county alone, seniors facing exploitation attempts, connected them with legal resources, and provided emotional support. One woman, Margaret, was 81 and dealing with a grandson who'd forged her signature on loan documents. Thanks to our intervention and Patricia's network, he was now facing criminal charges. "You saved my life," Margaret told me, gripping my hands with tears in her eyes. I thought I was alone. "None of us are alone," I replied. "Not anymore." The foundation work gave me something I'd lost: purpose. I wasn't just existing, waiting out my remaining years. I was fighting, protecting, helping. Every person we assisted felt like redemption. I'd also started traveling, something Robert and I had always planned but never prioritized. In April, I spent 2 weeks in Ireland with Helen, exploring castles and drinking entirely too much tea in charming villages. We laughed like schoolgirls and made plans for Italy in the fall. My health improved too. Dr. Patel commented on it during my checkup. "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. Your blood pressure is down, you've lost weight, you seem happier." I was happier, freer. Living for myself, not for anyone else's expectations. The support group evolved into genuine friendships. We celebrated birthdays, attended concerts, went to museums. Arthur met a widow named Linda, and they started dating, making the rest of us cheerfully envious. "Who says life ends at 70? Dorothy declared over dinner one evening. "We're just getting started." My grandchildren were a complicated situation. Emma had reached out via email when she turned 18, apologizing for being used as a pawn and asking if we could have a relationship independent of her father. We met for coffee, cautiously at first, but she was genuinely remorseful and curious about the foundation. "What you did was brave," she told me. "Dad won't admit it, but I think you were right to protect yourself." I started seeing her monthly. She'd escape to my house, we'd talk, and I'd quietly add to her college fund. She was applying to universities, planning to study social work. Christopher was still under Jennifer's influence, but he was only 16. Time would tell. Meanwhile, Michael and Jennifer's lives had collapsed spectacularly. Michael lost his real estate license permanently after the state board investigation uncovered years of ethical violations. Without income and facing multiple lawsuits from former clients, he'd filed for bankruptcy. He and his wife divorced. Apparently, attempting to defraud your mother is a deal-breaker in marriage. He was working at a car dealership now, selling used vehicles on commission. Emma told me he'd aged 10 years in 6 months, constantly angry, blaming everyone but himself. Jennifer's marketing firm let her go quietly, citing restructuring. Nobody wanted to hire someone infamous for trying to exploit her elderly mother. Last I heard, she was doing freelance work from home, barely making ends meet. Her husband was still with her, but the tension was visible whenever I saw them around town. They didn't speak to each other, just coexisted in miserable silence. They'd both moved to smaller apartments across town. The houses they'd been so proud of, the lifestyle they'd tried to maintain, the wealth they'd counted on from my estate. All gone. I saw Jennifer once at the grocery store. She turned down an aisle to avoid me, but not before I saw her face, exhausted, defeated, bitter. Did I feel sorry for her? Not even slightly. They'd gambled everything on greed and lost. The universe had a way of balancing scales. One evening, I sat on my back porch, the same porch where I'd once worried about being alone and vulnerable, and looked at my garden. I'd planted new roses this spring, varieties Robert had always wanted to try. Helen came over with wine. "To surviving and thriving," she toasted. "To surviving and thriving," I echoed. The sunset was beautiful. My life was full. I was surrounded by genuine friends, engaged in meaningful work, and completely, utterly free. I'd lost my children, but I'd found myself. And that, surprisingly, was more than enough. Looking back now, I understand what I learned. Love without respect is worthless, and family is defined by actions, not blood. I protected myself because I deserved protection. I chose dignity over dependency, and yes, it hurt. It still hurts sometimes, but I survived. More than that, I thrived. If someone you love sees you only as an asset, they don't truly love you, and you owe them nothing, not your money, not your autonomy, not your peace. What would you have done in my position? I hope you never have to find out. But if you do, remember this. You deserve better than betrayal, no matter who it comes from. Protect yourself, always. Thank you for listening to my story. Stay strong, stay vigilant, and never let anyone, family or otherwise, steal your dignity. And please, if this resonated with you, share it. Someone out there might need to hear it. Take care of yourselves.